I've had people ask me, where do I get my research material that backs up a lot of the stuff that I'm saying? I started 3 years ago researching very heavily into this issue of the Mekong River and what's happening on the river. I started with a lot of different articles, whether they be newspaper articles or whether they be articles that posted by large organizations such as National Geographic and larger. But in addition to that, in 1995, the Mekong River Commission put out their first manual. And I downloaded that manual and I studied that intensely to the point where, as what I'm going to show you here in a little bit, most of this stuff I've studied to the point where it just kind of glazes your eyes over, because it is very technical, some of it, and also it's very repetitive, some of it. But anyhow, I thought I'd take the opportunity. I don't have the 95 manual with me, but that's what much of part 1 and part 2, in particular part 2 of the Rive Project, was based on, was that particular manual. Since then, 2023, last year, they came out with 2 other manuals. And this one in particular is called the Preliminary Design Guidance. And you can download this one. You can find it on the web and download it and read it yourself. There again, much like the 95 manual, it is very intense. A lot of research went into it, but nonetheless, there's also a lot of questions with regards to what's in this manual. The other manual, another one from 2023, last year, and this is the coordinated operating rules basically for the cascade system, i.e. the several dams on the Mekong River and the tributaries that actually form a cascade. So this is another one that you can download for free and study it. And I will say this particular manual has done by some real experts. And what I mean by real experts, I mean experts outside of the countries where most of these dams are taking place, in particular Laos. There is some incredible research done in this particular manual because it deals with risks. And that's something that really hasn't been addressed too much in the past. It deals with risks, and in conjunction with those risks, it deals with straightforward mitigation and how to deal with those particular risks. So I'd highly recommend this particular manual as well. Now, I will say this, that some of it is easy reading and some of it's very technical. But nonetheless, I think it's well worth your time if you really want to know what's going on in the Mekong River. In particular, this manual. This one really starts hardcore addressing some of the issues, and whether or not they'll be addressed with, I don't know. And on that note, I want to bring about the 95, Article 4 in the 95 manual of the MRC. It specifically states that none of these guides are rules, all right? And if your river or your project happens to be within your own sovereign borders, you can do as you please. And I know that sounds a little ridiculous, but that is, I don't know how else you could possibly read it. Yes, they're guidelines, they're asking for cooperation, but nonetheless, in particular like Laos, if it's within their sovereign borders, they're pretty much doing what they want. And that's why they've got over 100 tributary dams, and they've also built 2 large dams on the lower Mekong Basin, the river, and which met a lot of controversy, even to the point of in a Supreme Court lawsuit in Thailand, which unfortunately the class action suit, the people lost. So there again, if you really want to understand the issue, this is where I get my material from. I get it from these manuals that I just showed you right here, as well as I follow articles that are written by the experts. And in a little bit, I'm going to share a story about experts that were supposedly with this man. I'm not going to mention names, but anyhow, he's high up in the hierarchy, if you will, of dam building in Laos. So I'm going to bow out of this right now and take a little bit of time and come back to you and share just the interview that I watched with this particular gentleman by a journalist with particular issues with the Xanaburi Dam that were coming up and how he addressed those issues. So I look forward to seeing you here in a little bit, and thanks for being here. Well, before I start with sharing this interview story, I just want to make sure that everyone understands the material once again that I reference because that's why it's here. It's done by the MRC, the Mekong River Commission. But you need to understand something, as I previously pointed out, that even though this particular manual says coordinated operating rules, there are no rules. Right? If there were rules, there'd be laws to enforce the rules, which there aren't. So all of these manuals that they put out are guidelines. They're asking people to do in good conscience, to do the right thing. Well, we already know in Laos that that certainly hasn't been the case with dam failure and other issues. So with that, I'm going to express or share, if you will, a story that I watched, an interview that I actually watched by a well-known journalist interviewing one of the top guys in the dam building hierarchy in Laos. I'm not going to mention any names. But nonetheless, the interview started with a couple different questions. One of the questions was, the interviewer asked this gentleman, it has been reported by the villagers who live along this river that within 48 hours of the dam starting to release water, that the water went from what is normally sediment brown into what is called the blue water syndrome, i.e. the water's clear, looked like that of the Caribbean. His response is, well, that's not true. And of course the interviewer says, well, these people live along the river. This is what they see. His response was, they're exaggerating. These people exaggerate about everything, all right? And we know that's not true because we have monitoring experts. We have the experts, all right? Well, the journalist kind of shrugged his shoulders at that one and decided he'd shoot with the next question. The next question was that the people that have lived along this river for years, relied upon the river for their food source, their fish, their crops, and so forth, stated that the fish that they're catching has dramatically declined. And that is due to the fact that the fish can't migrate anymore. They don't have their cycliture situations with floods that triggers these fish to migrate. And the big one is they can't get over the dams. So the gentleman's response once again was, these people are just exaggerating. They just want more money. This is not true because we have experts, and so consequently we know that this is not true. Yes, the fish are declining a little bit, but not to the extent that these people are exaggerating. Our experts tell us otherwise. So we kind of went back to the gentleman that was doing the interviewing, and at that particular time, prior to the actual starting of the Disappearing Dam, in the pre-planning phase, there were two major issues. Number one issue was with the gates that will release sediment, their level, their size, and in conjunction with that, a fish ladder that is supposed to allow the fish to migrate, come up over the dams. And it was stated that after they did these so-called modifications, the people from the Dong Shahong Dam wanted to copy that system. Even though the system had never been tested, it wasn't proven, and worldwide fish ladders, to the most point, don't work very well. This guy's response was, you know, after the interviewer asked him, well, why have this information not been shared? And he looked right at the interviewer and he says, this is proprietary information. Of course, the interviewer was like, proprietary? So you're not going to share this with other dam builders so that we can have migration on the river? Nope, don't have to share it. It's proprietary. Means it's secret. We don't have to share this with anybody. Wow. Okay. What about the size of the silt gates and their location and that? Don't have to share that either. Proprietary. Okay. Not only that, but we got our experts to say that all of these systems will work. They haven't been tested, but they will work because our experts say so. So I guess my take on this whole thing, I mean, I'm being very sarcastic, but my take on this whole thing is, in particular, fish migration. All right? how are these fish supposed to get over this dam? Now, this gentleman, we're going to talk about that, or we may probably already have talked about that in parts 3 and 4, but nonetheless, I'm asking myself, maybe this gentleman with his experts should get alongside the river and have a little over the dam education for the fish. Let's talk to these fish. Let's explain these fish. Hey, you can get over that dam. Shit, it's only 300 feet high. Not a problem. Oh, and by the way, if you happen to get on that spillway at 100 miles an hour and you smack that curved wall at the end, not a problem. We're not going to lose too many fish to that. So, you know, this is where it gets to be a sad joke, because the proper information is not, for one, I mean, these manuals are great, all right? But when you get down to the nuts and bolts, what is actually being shared and what is transparent? That's the big issue here, all along the Mekong River, from China all the way down. What is being transparent? And when I say transparent, I don't mean to the powers to be. I mean to the average person that lives along the Mekong River. That's where there is no transparency. It's right out the window. And mainly because of the governments that are involved, you can't say anything. If you do, well, let's just say there's repercussions, all right? So anyhow, I wanted to share that story with you, and I also wanted to bring that to a conclusion so that you understand that the transparency for a lot of it is not there. But if you do get a chance, look up these manuals, study them. As I said before, some of this stuff is technical, but it's understandable. So with that, I hope you'll stick with me on this whole project, even though it's coming to a close. Don't know where it's going to end up. Quite honestly, I'm not very hopeful for the Mekong River. I'm sad to say that, but I'm kind of just wondering what's going to happen when one of these big dams fail. Because when you're talking coordination, that has to be some pretty rapid coordination. And yes, they deal with it in this manual right here, but that's what it is. It's in a manual. How do you test for one of these major dams failing, especially in a cascade system where it's one dam after the other? I guess maybe we'll find out. I hope not. This is Hobo Rider, back with you on the Mekong River. And thanks for following along, folks, and I hope you enjoy it.